You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
And today, on this Total Wellness Tuesday, I want to go through how milk is really not the health food that you've been led to believe. The media would have you believe that you must drink milk. You absolutely have to have at least 1 to 2 glasses of milk per day in order to be healthy. And I know, growing up myself, that literally with every meal, we had a glass of milk, and we were told, well, we had to drink milk because it was going to make us nice and strong, meaning like our muscles and bones were going to become nice and strong from apparently the calcium in the milk. But when you look at it, a lot of these studies have been funded by the milk industry and the dairy industry in general. So when they're promoting or telling you to eat cheese and eat or drink milk at your meals and all these specific things, they're coming from the standpoint that it's a business to them and they want to sell you more and more dairy. But when we look at it, let's actually go now into the science. And let's actually say, does the science back up what the recommendations are and really what the media has led you believe? So keep in mind that milk in general has been drank now for a few thousand years, but it was very different. Here's why. So the milk from animals was consumed typically at room temperature. So literally it was drank the same day. It was drank with the healthy bacteria, so the healthy probiotics that were in the milk itself. The enzymes were actually contained in the milk itself. It came from cows or sheep or goat or an animal like that on a farm where the cattle or the animal itself was able to graze naturally on omega-3 based sources and not high omega-6 sources such as corn and soy and everything else that the animals are now fed that is not natural to them. So what happens when it's not natural? Well, they have to then be given loads and loads of antibiotics. The last time I checked, more than half of the antibiotics in this country is actually put in animal feed, which is really, really scary. That means we're consuming the animal meat that was fed all of these antibiotics. So we're talking about our ability not even to be able to be affected by antibiotics and how dangerous that is for future bacteria or some type of outbreak where antibiotics are not going to be as effective. That's a really scary thing. But the other thing is we're eating animal tissue that's so infected and so diseased because these animals are kept in unclean conditions, literally living in and walking around in their own waste while being fed a diet that isn't right for them, that if they weren't on those antibiotics, they'd be dead. And the other thing is they're also pumped full of growth hormone and full of estrogen-based hormones so that they can grow at an enormous rate, very, very quickly, taking any type of cow or animal like that to more than double their weight in just a year's time so that it can be sold right away. So that part alone is disturbing. But let's look beyond that. Let's say, well, okay, I'm willing to listen to that, but not enough to maybe eliminate or cut down on my milk consumption. I'm going to give you, of course, alternatives. So the other thing is this. Well, you can say, well, now I'm only going to buy grass-fed milk or products. And yes, organic is also great to do as well. But the problem is organic doesn't mean that it's grass-fed. It can also be fed organic soy. It can be fed organic corn, organic, seeds, those types of things. Again, not right for that animal. And it can also have had differing amounts of antibiotics and hormones still. It just depends on what cycle they're in when they're selling that milk. So very, very important thing to look at is knowing where you're getting your dairy-based products. Here's the other part. That dairy itself, so milk itself, has been linked to these issues. So here's where it gets a little bit deeper. So when you're taking in milk, you're taking in one of the main proteins. It's 80% of the protein in milk, and that's casein. Casein is what the China study was based off of. So you can just say the China study was skewed if you want, but it was not skewed in terms of the protein casein, the milk protein casein, where they showed a higher incidence of cancer with those people that did consume animal products. But now they consider this, again, a little skewed. I don't want there to be ever an agenda when we're trying to get information to people. So I don't have an agenda here at all today. I'm just presenting you with the facts. And so the China study really was based on that casein. And so it's important to understand that that does come predominantly from animal product, from milk, I should say. Okay. The other thing is that milk itself will increase your levels of growth hormone. Now, that might be great for a lot of bodybuilders, but the other issue is that when growth hormone is high in your body, or IGF-1 is high in your body, that will also increase the size of tumors or cancer. And obviously, I don't think any of us want that. And that's a big thing. The other part of it is a lot of supplement companies are selling casein powder now as an alternative to whey and as what they call slower digesting. Slower digesting because your body really can't absorb it. It has much larger protein molecules, and it is that product that's more likely to cause cancer. So a whey-based product would be a much healthier option for you, a much healthier choice. And there's actually a lot of immune-based boosting abilities to whey protein. It doesn't mean you have to drink it, but there at least is some evidence showing that the immune-based, immunoglobulin-based properties of whey protein can actually be quite helpful with your immune system if you tolerate dairy at all. So the other thing is dairy's also been linked to heart disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, and others. Now, why osteoporosis? Obviously, here's the big one. We have to drink milk because we have to get our calcium, right? Well, that's not true at all. And what they're showing now is that since dairy itself can be quite acidic, especially pasteurized dairy. I'm not going to get into unpasteurized versus pasteurized today. I'll talk about raw milk in the future. But when you drink this pasteurized dairy and it is acidic, your body needs to create buffers. And a lot of time, more calcium and minerals from your body can be pulled out from bones and tissues and those types of areas in your body that hold the minerals to then add some alkaline-based buffers to your blood. And your body has to do that. It does it automatically. But that doesn't make sense now when we're thinking about, well, if we're pulling calcium from our bones and now we're just taking more calcium in, it seems like there's either a net zero effect or a worsening effect. And so if you looked on a previous episode of mine about how to get your calcium from dairy, you'll be able to see that there are much, much better, healthier options. And I believe that was in episode 72 if you want to check that out. All right, just a few last things. We already know that the lactose a lot of times in dairy can cause a lot of gas and upset stomach with people. You pretty much know who you are if you do start to get cramping or diarrhea or anything like that after eating dairy. However, a lot of times what people don't realize is that the protein in the dairy, in the casein, in the whey, and in different items like that can actually cause an effect 24 to 72 hours later, and that's from an IgG response. That's from a latent response to the protein and not just the sugar, not just the lactose. To see if you're susceptible to that, I simply recommend doing the food sensitivity lab that we recommend, and you can do that obviously right at home. There's so many more that I can get into, but I'm not going to go through all the specific ones today. And the reason is I just want to leave you with this. I want to keep things simple always with every single Cabral concept. And that's dairy itself is not a health food. You do not need to take dairy in order to be healthy. Should a child or a newborn, an infant, consume their own mother's milk? Absolutely. I mean, that of course just makes sense. They're getting passed on immunity from the mother. They are getting the mainly carbohydrate, the sugar, as well as the fat in that breast milk as well. And it's completely different. The reason it's completely different is that a calf of a cow is born at around 120 pounds or so. A child, a baby, is only born around 8 pounds. Look at the difference. You're taking in the milk from an animal that starts out life at about 120 pounds. The protein molecules in that milk are so much larger. They are much harder to break down for humans and not as great an alternative. Now, let's say that you have to drink milk as a child or have to give it to your child. Well, If you decide to, a goat milk or sheep milk, we usually use goat, that's our recommendation, is, yes, their mineral content is different, but it's going to be a much better alternative because goats are born somewhere around 30, 40 pounds. So it's a little bit different. And at 30 pounds, their protein molecules in that milk it's much smaller and it's less reactive. There's less IGF-based properties in that as well. So these are things to take into consideration. I'm here to present you with that information today. What you do with it is your choice. My recommendation is this, though. If you can at least cut back on your dairy consumption, you'll find you're less bloated. You'll find you don't hold as much water weight. You have less conditions, most likely less tension, less headaches if you are prone to that, less allergies. There really are no downsides. If you say, I still want to drink milk, well, believe it or not, you can actually drink an almond milk, a Brazil nut milk, a coconut milk, and you'll get more calcium than regular milk. Now, my recommendation is getting in more of your dark leafy greens and some almonds and different things like that for your high calcium. But you can also do milk in general, but just not going to come from a cow or other animal. It will come from a nut-based version. And of course, they all have their pluses and minuses, but it's a much healthier alternative. So please do start experimenting with that. Try it out. My recommendation is if you can't just go off the cow's milk, at least move towards a goat milk cheese. Believe me, I've done so many labs testing food sensitivities. Really, dairy is like the number one. It really is up there for that IgG-based response. But goat cheese is at a little bit lower of a level. So you can at least start with that, maybe use that for now, and then wean yourself off less days per week. Hopefully that answers your question on whether or not milk is really a health food or not. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Cabral Concept.
Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well, finally, is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests, or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.